Butch Hartman, the man who contributed so much to our childhoods through the magic of pure creativity. Over the past decade, Butch has been able to bring to life some of the most memorable characters that we've all come to know and cherish. Characters, shows, and memories that will all serve as a staple in our youth for years to come. But with that in mind, a cascade of recent comments begs the question, is there more to this iconic creator than meets the eye? Could there be sinister intentions lurking behind the cheerful facade he so habitually flaunts? And if so, what does this mean for not only the progression of his career, but more importantly, the loyal fans who so willingly pour heaps of money into his vague and diluted Kickstarter campaigns? Let's get into it. So, Butch Hartman has always been someone I've never truly known how to feel about. On one hand, he created The Fairly OddParents and Danny Phantom, two of the most successful Nickelodeon shows to ever exist. But on the flip side, right, he just says the most inane shit that really makes you question what the guy's smoking.
You know what's funny? Wait, I want to say one more thing. Yeah, you know, as many things as I've done in my life, like being a father, being a husband, being a guy who's in his 50s who's done... Or a boss, a guy who's done shows, a guy who's stayed up late at night working really hard, to answer questions from people who've never done anything and they want to criticize. It makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. It's like, really? That's your question? So it's quite amusing, actually.
With a myriad of different interviews and stream highlights of Butch cropping up these past few days, it's no wonder people are starting to turn on him. I mean, some of this stuff, it's just kind of,
Because being an introvert is, and a lot of people, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack over saying this. If you're an introvert, it's a very selfish thing to be. And here's why. Because it's all about you. You're self-centered. You don't want to get out of yourself and go like, well, maybe I could communicate with these people. Well, I'm just an introvert. I'm going to sit over here and people have to figure out what I'm thinking. Because you're making everybody else uncomfortable when you're an introvert like that. Because no one knows what you're thinking. No one knows how you're feeling. And no one knows what to communicate with you.
Right, so according to dried up Corey Feldman here, introverts are hateful, self-centered, and uncaring of what others think and feel about them. Now I'm gonna give Butch the benefit of the doubt on this one and assume he doesn't actually know what an introvert is. An introvert isn't someone who intentionally tries to make others feel uncomfortable or something. It's not like introverts are these conniving, selfish people who just hate everyone. Many of them, myself included, just prefer being and working in solitude sometimes. I don't see that as a negative character trait or anything, and it's certainly not something that should hold you back from achieving whatever goals you've set for yourself. He is right in some regard that you need to open up and let others know what you're really thinking. That's obviously necessary when working in any field, really, but I probably wouldn't use the word introvert when saying that. It just kind of comes across as out of touch and a little ignorant. And this is only one example of him callously throwing a fraction of his fans under the bus. But if you think his friends and coworkers are void of being thrown under that same bus, you'd be dead wrong, because his manic comments don't stop there. No. I'm sure you're aware of Tara Strong, one of the most notorious voice actresses of this generation. Being the famous voice behind Timmy Turner, she's worked with Butch for years now. They're friends, pals, chums, confidants. She's poured her blood, sweat, and tears into his various programs for quite some time, which really gives his words a lot of impact, especially when he had the audacity to say this to her.
But Tara was not the original Timmy Turner. The original actress was Mary Kay Bergman, who sadly passed away. But she was
such a sweet lady.
Sweet lady. Mm-hmm. She also did a bunch of voices on South Park when that first started.
Yeah.
She was the mom on South Park.
No, she had a very prolific career. She was awesome.
Doing great. And then she ended up passing away. And I think Tara actually had something to do with that. And so that was probably your fault. No, I'm kidding. That was probably your fault.
No. You know, to me, there are just a few levels of intimacy you and another person can achieve. The most basic, of course, is sex, with the step up being hand-holding. The next would be good morning text. But the most intimate level of all is blaming each other for someone else's suicide. Isn't that just lovely? I'm tearing up as I say this now. There is nothing on earth sweeter than having a fat white raisin blame you for the death of another deeply disturbed voice actress. Butch is not only downplaying mental health, but he's also downplaying the death of a prominent actress who struggled with bipolar disorder for years leading up to her suicide. Some say hating on Butch is simply the cool thing to do these days, but after that comment, any hate that comes his way is completely justified in my book. He's an insensitive old man who doesn't know when to stop. But if you were to criticize him on anything that I've mentioned so far, he'd probably just blow it off and say something like this.
If you guys think you're going to knock me down or make me fail, do you know who you're dealing with? Do you really know? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? what I've been up against already as a father and a husband and someone who's worked in Hollywood for 30 years, and you are going to take me down? What are you kidding? That's kind of a joke.
Yeah, so according to this rejected greaser, he's free of any and all flack just because he's made a few shows. Butch hates criticism so much that he uses his status as a shield against the waves of vitriol that often berate his doorstep. It's fine to not let any hate get to you, but when you willingly negate constructive criticism from peers and fans simply based on the basis that they haven't done anything of their own, that's when it becomes a problem. You don't need to be an artist yourself to judge or critique a piece of art. He's too far up on that high horse to come down and accept criticism from anyone who doesn't have a net worth in the millions, and if that's not extremely telling, I don't know what is. But setting all that aside, it's important to note perhaps the primary reason he's been catching so much flack as of late. The situation that puts all his other callous remarks to bed. You see, last month, Butch came up with the brilliant idea of a streaming service called Oaxis. Now, hordes of commentators have already covered his, dare I say it, cringy Kickstarter campaign, so we won't go too deep into his video, but I do think his reward tiers are laughable at best. If you pledge $5, you get an email, you know, something I already get plenty of for free, and if you pay $75, you get a YouTube shout out. You could probably use one of those at the moment, not gonna lie. And of course, if you're feeling so generous as to pay $5,000 for this shit, you can talk to Butch. Yeah, that sounds like a worthy investment, good lord. Butch really knows how to turn a profit, I'll give him that. But wait a minute. I know what you're thinking. I see you sitting over there in a cesspool of your own drool and Dorito dust, wondering to yourself what Oaxis even entails. Well, as a matter of fact, it seems as if his own backers didn't even know. See, in his promotional vid, he prides Oaxis on being a family-friendly alternative to the likes of Netflix, YouTube, and Hulu. He wants to stream kid-safe shows, movies, and news shows to the entire family, which would be a great idea if it wasn't already a thing, but that's besides the point. He raised $260,000 regardless of the fact, though that's not where this story ends. It was recently found out that this streaming service would promote uber Christian values and shows, which is fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to showcase religious values on your own platform. The problem is he never mentioned it on the Kickstarter. You'd think that that'd be something people should know about when dropping, oh, you know, 10 grand to become a fucking animated character. A lot of fans who were initially under the impression that Oaxis would host shows like Fairly Odd Parents and Danny Phantom are now quick to label Butch as manipulative. I've seen the words religious indoctrination thrown around quite a bit too, and although that may be a bit much, I can at least see where people are coming from. People are understandably pissed that he withheld bits of information. Now, he has issued an apology note since, if you want to call it that. It basically just talks about how much he cares about his fans, which is rich, and that Oaxis won't be completely faith-based. It's great that he finally addressed the situation, but it's still unclear as to how big of a part spirituality will actually play here, which at the end of the day doesn't change much. When creating any crowdfunding campaign, the obvious and utmost important thing to be is transparent, and that is where Butch seriously dropped the ball. You cannot leave out a crucial tidbit of information like this, especially when asking for $250,000. Now, whether or not this was intentional, I don't know. But really, this whole situation could have been avoided if he had just been more upfront about it. Don't get me wrong, of course, he has the freedom to make whatever type streaming service he wants, but raising money for a campaign without 100% clarity and openness is a really bad move, whether or not his intention was deceitful. All you had to do was make the funny, Butch. Why couldn't you just make the funny? Butch Hartman has undoubtedly made some extremely successful shows over the course of his career, but he has also undoubtedly made some glaring mistakes, downplaying mental health, suicide, constructive criticism, and of course, failing to achieve complete transparency when using a crowdfunding campaign is just a recipe for disaster. He's a senile old man who just needs to go count his money and accept the fact that the peak of his career has passed. Though, despite all of his questionable actions, I think there's one thing that we can all come to terms with, that his Twitter is genuinely the worst thing on earth.
So I look at people that critique as weak. Weak rhymes with critique. So, you know, if you're going to critique like, hey, this is never going to work or whatever, then I just say, you know what, let's see you try it, and we'll see how you do. So go ahead and critique away, because all it does is make me stronger.